Say what? Say what? Say what? Say what? Say what? That's Rooks G. What's up, gang? Gang, gang. Let's go. Gang, gang. That's Rooks G. Everybody ready? That's what we call a little Saturday night streaming. Right. That's right. We're about ready. We're about ready. Toast, 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 toast. Toast, toast. That's right. Toast. All right, y'all about ready? We about ready here? Let's go. Check, 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 check. Toast, toast. Turn that mic up, level up a little bit. Just a little bit there. There we go. That's a little better. So it's at the Sandy Road. That's right. Yeah. That's our boy right there. All right, we ready? Boy Jerry right there. That's my boy Jerry. That's my boy Jerry right there. Yo, that's our boy Rooks G. What's up? We're doing a little Saturday night streaming. Tonight we're talking about sun-stained absurdist cinema. If that makes any sense, that's my title for tonight. Because I wanted to cover the counselor for a bit here. The counselor is Cormac McCarthy. Let me get this level right. Let me get this level just right here. Hold on. Let me turn this one down a little bit. And then let me turn that one up. I hope that's a little better. So hard to get the audio right. I feel like it's a little hot, but that's okay. All right, let me know how the audio is. Jerry, let me know how the audio is. I trust you. If I'm good, toast, toast, toast. All right, so tonight we're covering absurdist cinema. And actually, the films that I'm covering tonight really only burn after reading. Thank you so much. Burn After Reading by the Coen brothers. And this one, by the way, is shouts out to Jethro out there, because Jethro is the one who sponsored the stream on No Country for Old Men a long time ago. That was about 2 years ago. And I owe him a Coen brothers. So I thought we would do Burn After Reading tonight. And also, shouts out to our boy P.S. Prez out there, who wanted me to sponsored a stream on Martin McDonagh. So it's kind of a two for one here, because I'm covering Martin McDonagh also with In Bruges tonight. So we're going to do The Counselor, In Bruges, and Burn After Reading. And I was going to try to fit Being There in there also, the film Being There, which is, again, another absurd film, but I think we're going to cover that one later. I might talk about it a little bit tonight. But as sort of a offshoot of these in a tangential sort of way. But when we talk about absurdism, let me pull out my handbook to literature here. Let me talk about absurdism for a second, okay? Because in the little video description, I said this is Ionesco-esque, okay? So this is 1950s, 1960s, full-on postmodernist movement. Now we're in the triple postmodernist era. But absurdism is that's right, Chauncey Gardner. Absurdism is characterized by, when we think of existentialisme, and Sartre and Camus. I covered Camus on the Killer stream on the members channel. If you guys want to look into the members, if you want to grab a membership, you can see that one. The Michael Fassbender movie. And we think of existentialism and the disillusionment in postmodernism post-World War II, which is fitting because of D-Day and the 80th anniversary of D-Day just happening. But this is the sort of, in many ways, top-down push for a nihilistic nothingness that ends up in absurdity, where in many of these works, in many of the literary works, especially dealing with absurdism, and then getting into film is a perfect medium for this. We end up having this strange contrast between nihilism and humor. And that's especially true. I mean, it's even true in Stranger, in The Stranger by Camus. But right here in the Handbook to Literature, it says, in contemporary literature and criticism, a term applied, absurdism is a term that is applied to the sense that human beings cut off from their roots live in meaningless isolation in an alien universe. In other words, feeling dislocated from the locus. And obviously this is not something that I believe in. I'm talking about how this is shown in literature and how it's a kind of a perfect medium for cinema. Although the literature of the absurd employs many of the devices of expressionism and surrealism, I did a whole stream on surrealism, if you want to go back to that one. And we even covered Andre Breton in the manifesto of the surrealists and the occult roots of surrealism. And its philosophical base is a form of existentialism that views human beings as moving from the nothingness from which they came to the nothingness in which they will end through an existence marked by anguish and absurdity. It's perfect for the films we're about to cover. But one thing that's interesting is we're going to see that is not actually the case, especially with In Bruges, in how the medium is portrayed. They live in a world in which there's no way to establish a significant relationship between themselves and their environment. Here's Camus. Camus, the myth of Sisyphus, is one central expression of this philosophy. Extreme forms of illogic, inconsistency, and nightmarish fantasy mark the literature expressing this concept. The idea of the absurd has been powerfully expressed in drama and in the novel where Joseph Heller, Catch-22, Thomas Pynchon, Gravity's Rainbow, Günter Grass, and in the novel, and in Kurt Vonnegut Jr. just did Kurt Vonnegut a couple months ago, right? Slaughterhouse-Five, have practiced it with distinction. And then, of course, the next entry here talks about the theater of the absurd, a term invented by Martin Esslin for the kind of drama that presents a view of the absurdity of the human condition by the abandoning of the usual or rational devices and by the use of non-realistic form. And Martin Esslin is somebody that I've covered when I've discussed Antonin Artaud, and the theater of the absurd, the theater of cruelty, and the theater of blood. But this is interesting because one of the things that comes out of these films, especially in Bruges, within Bruges, what we get is something totally different. The religious undertones in the movie, the Christian undertones in the movie, are supposed to mark a distinction between the high and the low. And that's why the characters are in a medieval city with churches, and they're constantly looking up at the bell tower, and some of the main scenes take place in a bell tower. And they are wandering around in a Garden of Earthly Delights, Purgatorio, a la Hieronymus Bosch within the movie. And it's sort of the fact that the movie has form and perfectly ties up with itself, and the characters are looking for redemption, marks the progress between the absurd back into both grounding and the metaphysical, back into a world with meaning. So what I think is really interesting is that the counselor, I guess I'll start with the counselor here by Cormac McCarthy, and then I'm going to get into In Bruges and then Burn After Reading. So the counselor is, I've covered Blood Meridian, The Crossing, The Road, No Country for Old Men. I've covered a bunch of Cormac McCarthy. And No Country for Old Men is interesting because it is written in a cinematic style that is easily translatable to film. And translate is a term that I got. Who did I get that from? I got that from a recent stream that I did. And I was just reading Ezra Pound before I got here. Part of this is I'm gonna get past the sort of high literary content and go straight into the movies, but I think it's relevant for what I'm about to discuss because Ezra Pound talks about the luminosity of words and poetical terms and the luminous nature of how poetry shines. And I think that this is partly extant in Cormac McCarthy's writing, because even though Cormac McCarthy, No Country for Old Men, and especially Blood Meridian I've discussed in detail, but it's about as pure of a Gnostic work as one can get in terms of the entire structure of the work and of the narrative, of characterization. But I think that with The Counselor, what happens is this is a screenplay. It's not in novel form. It's written purely for the screen. This is a scot-free production. And the movie came out in 2013. If you guys have seen it, the movie came out in 2013. It's got Michael Fassbender. What's her name? Abre los ojos. Open your eyes. Penelope Cruz. And it's funny because the movie begins with, she doesn't say open your eyes, but the movie begins with something, I forget what the first line of the movie is, but it's like that. And that's the third time that she's done this in a movie. Producers and casting directors must love when they have a beginning of a movie that the movie opens with white with sheets and these two lovers in bed, one of whom is played by Michael Fassbender. He's the counselor. Interesting how Cormac McCarthy paints his protagonist with a name kind of like in The Invisible Man with Ralph Ellison. We get the characters whose names are defined by their role in whatever their microcosmic society is, which actually ends up in the movie being global because we see that's the nature of the cartel and its enterprises in the film. But we get a great cast here. Javier Bardem. I think this is probably Cameron Diaz's best role. It's certainly her best dramatic role. She hasn't done many dramatic roles. I mean, this is the polar opposite of her role in Gangs of New York. I mean, Gangs of New York, as much as I love the movie when it came out. I like gang movies. Of course, I like Daniel Day-Lewis. I watched the movie when I was in England at drama school, and Daniel Day-Lewis went to my school. And then when he was up for the Oscar for that year, we stayed up all night to see if he won. He didn't. That was one of the years he didn't win, but he's won 3. But, she's not really my mother. I know that, Bill. Ghoul. It's a good word. Bill the Butcher is a really great character, but Cameron Diaz's character in that film is not great. It's almost laughable. It's not absurd. It's certainly not literary and absurd in a literary sense, but it's not really that great of a role for her. CIA cyberpunk says Fassbender was dope as young. I mean, A Dangerous Method is a good movie. That's one of Cronenberg's. That's part of the Cronenberg streak of non-body shock, body horror movies that he did, which I really like. You know, Eastern Promises is the best of those. But A Dangerous Method is a pretty good movie. And I think that, you know, Javier Bardem is especially good in this. He plays a full-on character. Even Brad Pitt is in this movie. We've covered Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt's in Burn After Reading, which we're going to cover. I just did a stream on Brad Pitt's sort of trilogy of Brad Pitt movies. It's interesting how many good works he has popped up in. Yeah, I like A History of Violence. Yeah, but this movie. So what happens in the movie? The movie is about Michael Fassbender plays the counselor. He's the attorney. He's an attorney who is about to get married to Penelope Cruz. He's about to be engaged, and the movie starts off with them talking, and it's interesting because they're doing pillow talk, and there's this interesting like sort of juxtaposition between how raunchy the pillow talk gets. I mean, it's two people in bed at home, and the purity of the setting at the beginning of the movie, which is also going to sort of foreshadow. In a way, even though it's all in white, it's going to sort of foreshadow the cartel substances that are going to appear through. They're not going to literally appear in the movie, but we can read into them through the subtext. And the counselor, Michael Fassbender, then goes and, first, okay, we cut from there to we see what looks like a savanna, but we are in the United States, but we see a savanna and we see Javier Bardem and Cameron Diaz in this, you know, it's almost like a Louis Vuitton ad or something. You know, it's very stylized, and Cameron Diaz is great in this movie. She's got cheetah prints on her shoulder, cheetah print tattoo, and she's wearing jodhpurs and brown pants like a safari. She's on a safari, but we are going to learn that her safari is actually a safari for human beings. She's the ultimate predator in this movie, which is interesting because her two sort of Yakin and Boaz spirit animal psychopomp characters are this is a pair of cheetahs, and the cheetahs are running. We see Javier Bardem. He clearly takes the beta position in this, which is a really interesting thing. He's simply making drinks. He's serving her cocktails out of the back, you know, out of the trunk of a car, but it's very stylized, and these people are obviously on some sort of criminal alpha level. But the way that she's seated and is silent, and the way her eyes are sort of mirroring the horizon, and we see her kind of looking into the past and the future in a figurative sense, we can tell that she's the powerful one. She's the G-Max here. And so then we go on to see that there is a group of bad hombres loading up a sewage truck, and they are sealing metal containers inside the truck, pouring sewage inside. So they're obviously trafficking narcos across the border, and it seems to be a pretty good cover. So they cross over the border, and there's a weird transition from them driving along the dusty southwestern roads across the border, and the dust coming off the road. It's as if Cameron Diaz is literally looking at this transport, but she's not actually there. So then we infer throughout the movie, this is one of the strengths of Cormac McCarthy. One of the things that we get from his writing is that there's very little exposition, and we don't need to be told the story. We can read into the story, and we're shown the events. It's extremely cinematic and highly stylized. And the reason that this movie failed, I think, and not in terms of audiences, because it actually did do pretty well. It made back its initial, it made back its money. I think most people don't think it did, but I think it did. But the reason the movie fails in terms of its artistic merit is that I think that the directors and the producers weren't exactly sure what they had on their hands, or they didn't know how to, translate it to film. And that seems like a weird mistake to make, but I can see how they did that. And what happens, the outcome of this is that because the writing seems to be linear and so straightforward, even though it's written in a typical Cormac McCarthy style full of sentence fragments, is that instead of using the words on the page and forming and using that as content and then making the form mirror it on the screen in terms of something that is unusual, something that is there's a lot of figurative visual language that we have to use with Cormac McCarthy. I think, ironically, No Country for Old Men accomplishes that. It's such a great film because it's set in the past. We have multiple storylines. We're cutting. We're going all over the place, and because we focus on the characters, and this film is not really centered on the characters like that movie is. It's actually focused on the overall narrative, which is a weird mistake to make. I can see that, though, being a pretty... It's like a small mistake to make in terms of the filmmaking process, but it actually ends up forming this chasm between reader and viewer, or between audience and what we're looking at on the screen. In other words, just to make that sort of plain and simple, instead of again, highly stylized movie with an interesting interpretation, we get something that's almost straightforward, as if we're just watching events take place in a play. And I think that was a mistake in making the film. Now, there are symbolic sequences and things loaded with purpose and with meaning, and that are multi-layered. For instance, the first scene in the movie, or the way that when the characters get across the border, they go to a junkyard and the truck is smoking, and they take this thing out of the engine, and we need to learn what that thing is. It looks like some sort of a transmitter, but what we learn as the movie goes on is it's not simply a transmitter. It's the thing that, I don't know how to explain this. It's the thing that allows the engine sequence to fire up so the engine can turn over, but it's also a tracking sequence because it's loaded up with product. And so then what happens is basically Michael Fassbender goes and what's the girl's name? She was in White Men Can't Jump. What's the actress's name in White Men Can't Jump? She's in this film. It's Chad. Help me out. Help me out with this. She's in jail. She's his client. She goes to help him, and we don't know what her role is in all this. We think that she's just another client that he is representing, but what we find, and this is one of the mistakes of the movie, but this is what we learn, is that she's actually either the cartel boss, or she's one of the power brokers in this whole giant scheme, and that by a sort of accident of fate within the movie, it turns out that her son, whom she asks Michael Fassbender, the counselor, to represent or to get out of jail, turns out to be the guy who transmits the tracking device / engine thing between the people who are picking up the product and the people who transported it. And it's headed for Chicago. The truck is headed for Chicago. So it's going right up the line in mainlining through the country. And I assumed that the product was heroin. I guess it doesn't matter, but I guess it's probably cocaine in this because of the foreshadowing with the white sheets. It's that soft white. Yes, Rosie Perez. Thank you. Yeah, it's Rosie Perez. Thank you, Papa Perez. So he bails her out of. He bails this. He's going to go bail the son out, and he's going to represent him. Well, then we see that basically Javier Bardem, cutting back to Javier Bardem and Cameron Diaz, they are a couple, and they are involved with with organized crime, and he is dressed in a way. He presents himself in a way where he is dressed like a 2000s Hollywood movie producer / like he's got frosted tips. He's got big outlandish shirts, and he's fully colorized. And he obviously, this is a cover. You can see it in his eyes when you're watching it, that he is afraid of his wife. Michael Fassbender, on the other hand, has flown off to meet with the diamond broker, the guy Bruno Gans, who is selling him a diamond. And there's this whole sequence. This is one of the mistakes that the movie makes. There's a whole sequence where the diamond broker is selling him an engagement ring, and he's talking about the metaphysical symbolism inherent in what a diamond represents. But all we get is an office. And I don't know how they would have done this. I don't know what they could have done in terms of cinema to make this look the way that it should have appeared on the screen. But the way that it appears in your mind when you read it is more full. And I don't know what the solution with this would have been, but it wouldn't have been an office in Rotterdam or whatever with just a guy sitting at a desk explaining the diamond. That's part of it. But the dialogue is otherworldly and slightly alien, not in a Kubrickian in a Kubrick sense, but it reeks of. It could go one of two ways. It could go into pure absurdity and a sort of an alien out of body world, not literally like not beep boop aliens. I'm talking about like a person who is an outsider, a Camus sense of an outsider, a stranger, or it could go into something that is stylized and symbolic and a dark beauty, and that could be with shading, it could be with the color, it could be with the props, it could be. There's so many things they could use, but whatever they used, it doesn't really work. And so we know Michael Fassbender is getting an engagement ring. He's going to ask Penelope Cruz to marry him, and then we see Penelope Cruz with Cameron Diaz, and they're sitting at a spa, and Cameron Diaz has this long sequence basically about, her dialogue is essentially about how we can read into her dialogue to tell that she is dangerous, she's predatory, even in a conversation with her peer, and that she's not on the same level with this person who is going to be in her world but doesn't know what she's in for yet because of her future husband, the counselor. Cameron Diaz then goes to confession, where she confronts the actor who's in Zero Dark 30, and he played Carlos the Jackal. He's the better version of Pedro Pascal. I've talked about him like a few times recently, so it was synchro that this guy appeared again. Oliver, I forget his name, Ramirez or whatever. But he's actually, in my opinion, a better version than Pedro Pascal. He's kind of like they have the same type of roles, but his roles should have been this guy's roles. Anyway, she goes to confession, and she makes a mockery of her being there in the first place and of basically the whole system. And we can tell that this isn't just because of her simply sitting in a confession booth and mocking a priest. It's actually something much darker. And again, this was a failure in the movie that they didn't present something darker with her in this scene. And I don't know if it would have been the way that the scene is portrayed, the stillness, like the very few shots they have. It's basically 3 shots in the scene. It's like looking at both of them from the outside, and then her perspective and his perspective. And that was it. And it seemed like it required more in this scene. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but she is she looks almost like Blade Runner-esque in this movie. She was very, very good. One of the other problems in the movie was that she makes reference in one part to how her parents were thrown out of a helicopter when she was young. So she's obviously she's Argentinian or Chilean, and she's was a child during Operation Condor in South America, and that this has sent her on a trajectory to the power position she is now, which is not only an arc trajectory, but it's also northward. It's up through South America into where she is now, and she's going to make her way into north. She keeps going. It keeps going north, like her star sort of keeps rising in this. And she's not I don't think she's a Sophia character. She's almost like a demonic, just a kind of Whore of Babylon character in this movie. I say that because there's an infamous scene where Javier Bardem meets with Michael Fassbender and tells him that he is afraid of his wife, and he says he's essentially asked, "Do you know what a suckerfish is?" And he goes on to this really. It's an inventive scene. They did this scene well. I thought this was one of the few scenes they did well because it's pretty horrifying. He says that they were out driving one night. They're in her yellow Lambo, and she stops the car It's a convertible, and she basically does a lascivious dance on the windshield of the car. And what he sees goes beyond the point of sexuality. It goes into the point of a kind of Black Widow, where he is so sexualized in this instance that he knows that he's going to be consumed. And that is a really risky thing to do on paper and in film in terms of whether it'll work or whether it will be absurd. And it actually does end up being absurd, but in a dark absurdism, which is pure in line with, it kind of crosses over the boundary from absurdism into a kind of Nietzschean nihilism, where he is so struck with horror looking into the abyss that he sees himself looking back in the form of this suckerfish Black Widow woman on the window of the car. So he's looking at himself and he's looking at her at the same time. The two images are transposed onto one another, looking back at himself. And so Michael Fassbender, the counselor, doesn't really understand this scene. And I thought that was, again, one of the problems in the movie, that acting is not reacting. It's not just acting in an active sense or reacting. It's actually listening or presenting oneself. One has to be present in the scene. And whether it was Fassbender himself or the editing or what they told him to do in terms of his reaction and his presence in the scene, it just didn't really work. But maybe in a sense it does work, because he does seem aloof in this. And when he's presented with the deal by Javier Bardem, which is basically that Javier has a club and he wants Fassbender to invest in it. And also, they're going to use that as a money laundering operation. And he's going to fund one of the crossings, one of the Cormac McCarthy crossings. But this is trafficking of narco product back across the border. And he warns him that anything can happen, and you don't really know what you're getting into. So I would warn you not to do this. Now, later, Fassbender meets with Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt plays a kind of a neo 21st century cowboy who is a facilitator amongst the cartel and the buyers and all this stuff. And he tells him specifically, he tries to warn him on a number of times in one conversation that don't do this. He says, do you know what a bolito is? And he says, well, I know what a bolo tie is. And he says, yeah, it's the same sort of thing, but there's a device. It's essentially a steel coil, and it has a metal device on it with a timer. And what someone does is they slip this over your head and they twist it, and that will sort of ignite the timer, and it will not stop until it squeezes all the way. And when it squeezes all the way, it cuts through one's carotid artery and it sprays the bystanders with blood to send a message. And the message is essentially nothingness. The message is essentially just one of terror and fear, to let one know that this could happen at any time. And the people are left questioning, what is this? But that's part of the whole kind of chaos of the situation. He says, counselor, do not get involved with this. I can get out. I need to do this one last thing. It's this one last thing. And he says, you should live your life and don't get into this. Well, in the meantime, Rosie Perez's son is a motorcyclist. He's a biker, and he gets arrested because he gets clocked going 240 miles an hour down the Western Highway. And he gets arrested. Well, he's got a helmet. And so then we see this guy who is and this is one interesting thing about the movie. This is actually really good. We're always presented in films with the bad guys on the other side. We rarely get them on this side as part of the deal. And a lot of times, like you remember in Sicario, when they go down across the border and they see the bodies hanging, and the guy with the glasses says, the thing about this is that it makes you think that they did something, when actually they didn't, which is this is a pure hearts and minds Phoenix operation, right? Where it's to instill fear in the minds of the population, or in terms of the whoever the enemy is, or in terms of the local population, to break their minds and wills and spirit. And it's to say that, we're getting into the world of absolute chaos here. And the end of Sicario, obviously, is about Ordo Ab Caio, because they're sending in Delta Force to take, what's his name, Benicio del Toro down there to take over the cartel so they can be tracked and led from top down by CIA and intelligence operations. But this one is slightly different. But there is a character who is on the northern side of the border, and he goes to a hardware store, measures a motorcycle. He gets a tape measure, measures it, and then he drives out into the wastelands. He puts a cable across a road. He hikes it up, turns his truck lights to face the road, and he's got a timer, and he's told, here comes the guy, and we can hear the motorcycle coming, and then he flashes the lights on. This is a great scene. He flashes the lights on. The guy looks up from his motorcycle, and then shing, head gets lopped off, and then he gets the motorcycle helmet, hawks the head out of the thing, and pulls out the timer. And now we're left questioning who did this. Well, the next scene is that Counselor gets a call from Javier Bardem, essentially, and or from Brad Pitt, and it says, "No, okay, it fucked up. It's gone missing, and now you're accountable for this. You're liable." And so what ends up happening here is that his one entryway into this thing is his one entryway into the wrong place. He ends up in exactly the wrong position he didn't want to be in. And he makes a series of mistakes that show how aloof he is. He says, "Oh, I'm back home now, but I'm leaving any minute." And Brad Pitt says something like, "Any minute? Okay, I'm getting out of here." Next scene, we see Penelope Cruz. We were also told, this is a horrible thing, Brad Pitt also explained to him about how the 8mm thing works. And how, again, he said his point of this is that there is no depth to the depravity and the levels that these people will go to, not only because of the money and the power, but as part of their running of the operation. And a great example of this is the book Matamoros, about the Matamoros cult, and Costanza George Costanza running the Matamoros cult. If you want to read that about what happened in the when all that went down, because it's a Santeria mix of Satanism and the power running of the cult. So ends up being a narco cult. So when we see Penelope Cruz get kidnapped at the airport, and at this point she's clearly pregnant. I don't think she was pregnant in the film. I mean, in real life. I don't think she was pregnant as her character in the movie. I think she was just pregnant in real life, because there was no backstory to that or why that happened. But shouts out to Archimedes right there. Hey, thanks for coming. Archimedes says, "It's the first time I've been able to catch a stream. Been a long-time viewer of BLA. Can't wait for more streams, and thanks for keeping up the great work." Hey, thanks, Archimedes. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate that. Thanks to everybody watching right now. You guys make sure you smash that like and share. And if you want to support me, you can support me with the super chat function. You can ask me questions, leave comments, and you can also support me directly right here. Of course, that helps. And thank you to everybody who's here, especially all the members. Really appreciate y'all. So we know that when Penelope Cruz is kidnapped, that she's going to be put through the 8mm operation. And then we see Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt gets the bolito, and Javier Bardem gets chased down by a crowd of people. We also see a short scene where, what's the fucking actor's name? The guy who was in the menu, Taco Tuesday. Not that guy. What's the guy's name? He was in Carlito's Way, and he's in the menu, and he's in this movie. There's too many names. There's too many names. If I'm sitting here talking to you in real life, then I can remember the name. But when I'm trying to remember all this, I can't remember the damn guy's name. What's the guy's name? He had the stand-up act, and what's that guy's name? You guys, somebody help me out. What's the guy's name in Carlito's Way? Not Al Pacino. The guy who's in this, and he's in the menu, and he's in The Counselor. Anyway. Yes, thank you so much. So anyway, that guy, we see a scene where he's in Chicago, and he is removing the metal containers from the trafficking, from the transport, so it's gotten there. So it ends up getting there because the guy who killed the guy and hijacked the truck, now he gets hijacked again. And we're supposed to take into this, Richard Simmons, that's right. We're supposed to take into this, out of this, that Cameron Diaz had something to do with this, that Cameron Diaz was the one who facilitated the hijacking of the operation, and then it gets taken up again by the John Leguizamo, thank you. And so it changes hands a number of times. And I think this is particularly relevant and revelatory and truthful for how these operations work. It's probably shown in a pretty truthful manner. But one of the things that Leguizamo tells Dean Norris, who is the obviously, and there's no exposition here. I really like this about the movie, that we are clearly supposed to read into the subtext of the scene, that Dean Norris is the mob contact who's going to take the product and then disseminate it throughout the country. But what he says is, what's in that last one? And the guy says, oh, that's just nothing. And he says, he opens it up for him, and there's a body rotting in the metal container, Breaking Bad style. And he says, they send it along from South America, and it's just funny. They send it here because to them, it's funny. And this is the absurdism of the movie, that death and playing with death in the movie and the pointlessness of their operation in terms of what's going to happen to their lives is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. He says, what are we going to do? We're going to seal it back up and we're going to send it back. And it just goes back and forth. So not only does it end up being a kind of occult totem here, some sort of talisman of death being transported, there's literal death being transported with the product, but also that it's absurd and it's a joke to the people sending it from south to north and north to south. So in the end, what happens is Fassbender tries to communicate with one of the cartel guys, and they go through a sequence of dialogic, pure McCarthyan wordplay here that is really probably the high point of the movie, but was not done. It was not done well in the film. And that's because the guy is playing pool while he's saying these lines. It doesn't seem like he means them when he says them, but he's got a great part here. He says, let me find it. Let me find this great part. When it comes to grief, the normal rules of exchange do not apply because grief transcends value. A man would give entire nations to lift grief off his heart, and yet you cannot buy anything with grief because grief is worthless. I would urge you to see the truth of the situation you're in, counselor. That's my advice. It is not for me to tell you what you should have done or not done. The world in which you seek to undo the mistakes that you made is different from the world where the mistakes were made. You are now at the crossing, pure McCarthy here. And you want to choose, but there's no choosing there. There's only accepting. The choosing was done a long time ago. I don't mean to offend you, but reflective men often find themselves at a place removed from the realities of life. In any case, we should all prepare a place where we can accommodate all the tragedies that sooner or later will come to our lives. But this is an economy few people care to produce. So what he's saying here is he's really giving a McCarthyan, verging on Gnostic, a monologue here in the Cormac McCarthy Gnostic sense of, no matter what you chose to do, no matter what you're going to do, what you chose to do, it's never going to come to a resolution for you. And he says the thing about a reflective man, and the reflective man thing is ironic because the counselor is not reflective. He's reflective in the sense that he's reflecting all the people around him and what they're doing, but he's not a self-reflective person. He gets into this thing for almost no reason. And then it ends with him going to Mexico and trying to reclaim Penelope Cruz and being given a disc. And we know what's on that disc. So it all ends at the crossing. It all ends at the crossing into the abyss, into darkness. And that's the counselor. Yeah, that life is a sick joke for everyone involved in this film. So that's my take on the crossing. Again, I mean, not the crossing, the counselor. Again, this is, I think this is a great example of how Well, I think Elon says typical McCarthy NPC prattle. I don't think so. I disagree with you. I think that this is not prattle, and I don't think that McCarthy is NPC in any sense of the word. And look at any of the words, any of the works that I've covered. But I do think that that the way they portrayed it in the film is that it's prattle. It gets lost. It gets lost as if they are prattling on. And that's not what it is. It's actually very relevant for the operation they're involved in. But this is not Blood Meridian. This is not No Country for Old Men. This is something that meant to be translated on the screen and didn't work. So you're absolutely right in that sense. The next film I'm going to cover here, don't forget, you guys, support me if you want. You can super chat me. You can ask me questions, grab a membership, whatever you want. And now, again, I'm covering this next film. What's the next film I'm going to cover? Burn After Reading. Let's cover Burn After Reading. That one's for Jethro. So Burn After Reading is definitely an example of the absurdist, ironical humor in cinema that is showing, and this is pretty relevant because it's showing something tied in with intelligence. So this is Coen Brothers. Coen Brothers, No Country for Old Men, now Coen Brothers, Burn After Reading. The movie's called Burn After Reading because it deals with John Malkovich, who's a Princeton CIA analyst and who gets demoted because of his drinking and for a number of reasons. But his wife, Tilda Swinton, has heterochromia in the movie, and she is cheating on him with George Clooney. George Clooney plays a Homeland Security, Treasury Department guy. This is like DC society, all sort of in Maryland, and they're all it's pretty interrelated with the characters, and they're all basically sleeping with each other's wives. And we even have the typical Coen Brothers. We have this great part where, first of all, there are a number of characters. The Coen Brothers are great in terms of whoever they get for casting their movies, because the attorney for Tilda Swinton, the divorce attorney, is almost in the same league as Liam and me. Liam in Big Lebowski, or that woman in No Country for Old Men. I said we don't have any more rooms. That woman, the only woman who scares Anton Chigurh, who matches Anton Chigurh in the movie. She's the only character who matches him. She confuses him so much because of her continental standoffishness that she scares him in the film, and he gives this look. I said, right? But it's called Burn After Reading because they find what they think is an intelligence document, and they're supposed to burn it after, it's a typical wording for an intelligence document. But also because of the absurdity of the whole movie, the movie means nothing. Pretty much, they go through all of these events, and it's kind of like an anti. It's like a polar opposite, but in the same universe as Big Lebowski, where we get sequences of looking up from above. That's why Big Lebowski begins with the fatalistic tumbleweed, and we get the sequences of flying on the magic carpet, and we get all these random characters who come in because it's absurd. And in the end, Bunny just reappears, and nothing really meant anything, and they've lost Donnie. Well, in this one, the movie begins with the God's eye view of the Earth and focuses in until we get a guy walking through the halls of Langley, and then the movie ends with pan out, right? But her lawyer says, "This is a man. This is a man," and it was the same as Big Lebowski, and so that sort of ties in the verbiage of the two movies. But Malcatraz, who's great, he's fantastic in this movie. I'm gonna get you fuckers. I'm back. I'm gonna be there, you fuckers. Look who's back. That's where he's doing workouts on his boat. And Malcatraz really does fit the role. I mean, he says, I'm writing my memoir. He's a North Atlantic, transatlantic CIA Princeton analyst with a bow tie who goes to his Princeton reunion parties, and they sing songs, and he's holding a leg of lamb. They're all toasting wine. They're all in black tie. they have these cocktail parties with these other DC insiders, and eventually, all this stuff kind of comes to a head with J.K. Simmons as the boss, who says, "Okay, well, I guess come back to me when you figure it out, right?" But Brad Pitt in this movie is fantastic. Brad Pitt plays Chad, who works at Hard Body's gym with Frances McDormand. Frances McDormand is in a typically nihilistic life where she's trying to get, body modifications. She's trying to get, not body mods, but she's trying to get liposuction, superficial help to superficial cosmetic changes to her that won't change the reality of her situation or her motivation or anything about her actual life. She just wants to, but she wants to find a man, so she's doing a sort of 2000s weird, internet dating with in a pool mixed with all of these other lonely DC people who just hang out on park benches. Just drones. Everybody in the movie is just an NPC, just a drone. Until we get Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt is the fitness instructor with frosted tips, like in the last movie. And he's got his iPod Nano, and he's doing workouts. The best scene with Brad Pitt. First of all, when whenever he drinks from his water bottle, he's always drinking this sideways, like he's got to get to the next workout. He rides his bike. What about you think it's a Schwinn? He plays a total idiot who they find a CD-ROM on the floor of the gym, and they think it's CIA material. And so Frances McDormand takes it to the Russian embassy. It's just a walk-in. And it ends up just being dribble, and she calls it dribble. Malcatraz corrects Brad Pitt when he calls him on the phone for his blackmail. He corrects his pronunciation. Brad Pitt, when he's waiting in the car, staking out the house to see who goes into Malcatraz's house, he's listening to his headphones, and he's dancing in the car, and it's very funny. He's a lovable idiot in the movie. He plays a great lovable idiot who sneaks into the house and is hiding in the closet. It's actually George Clooney's closet. Or it's Malcatraz's house, but George Clooney's there having an affair with his wife, so now he shoots him in the house, and he thinks that he's a spook because he's being followed. He looks in Brad Pitt's the breast pocket of his blazer, and it's cut out, and he's got nothing in his wallet. Again, Coen brothers with wallets, right? It's like, oh, you open the wallet and there's a Ralph's card. Well, in this one, it's just like $3 and nothing else. So he thinks he's killed a spook because he's being followed. So then they're on his tail because they've been tracking John Malkovich, and then they end up tracking George Clooney to see if they have been leaking intelligence documents, but it's just dribble because he's been trying to publish his memoirs. And he dumps the body. He dumps Brad Pitt's body in the Chesapeake Bay. They fish it out. They say, we don't know who it was. J.K. Simmons is the overseer. He says he's the boss, and he says, I don't know, burn it. No, don't let the feds get involved. Just burn it. Burn it. We don't want them messing around with this. And in the end, everybody's unhappy. Nobody's marriage gets preserved. People's lives get destroyed. People get sent off other places or get killed. And nothing happens. At the end of the movie, nothing happens. So it's pretty underrated as a film. And again, that's why it's called Burn After Reading, because after the movie, you've burned it. And that means, again, that the work you've just read meant nothing. This, like Bateman says, this confession has meant absolutely nothing. And Bateman, of course, is the ultimate example of the black nothingness of psychopathy filled with the crimson mist of murder. But this one is the Ionesco type, almost Brechtian sense of humorous alienation where nobody accomplishes anything, and nobody has done or meant anything because nobody has any values or morals or grounding, and everybody's sort of out for themselves. But it's presented in a hilarious way. The Donegal tweed jacket would add some gravitas to Professor BLA's lecture presentations. Yeah, I had a Donegal tweed that I got when I was 15 when I was in Ireland. I got it in Donegal. And that was the best jacket I ever had. It lasted me for about 25 years until it finally outgrew it, and it got so tattered. So, and I had two other tweed jackets with complete with elbow patches, and so I need to get another one of those. Maybe that's what I should ask for my birthday when I turn the big double 4 this year in the fall, when I turn that big 44. Maybe that's what I should ask for, is another Donnie go. Really, I should go back over. I should go and visit you, Crisp, and meet up with you for a paint. We should meet for a paint on Sunday, Row. Shouts out to Bad Bart right there, who drops $5 and says, I never left a movie feeling more disheartened and depressed than after Burn, after reading that last scene with J.K. Simmons was such a downer. Well, that's a good point, and I think that, and thank you for that $5, Bad Bart. That's really generous of you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for reaching out and dropping your comment right there. Everybody, give Bad Bart a like, and thank you, Bad Bart. I really appreciate it. And I can see why you feel that way, but I think that there are certain movies to feel like that with. But what the movie is showing you is that I don't think that you should leave disheartened and depressed with this, because I can't tell you how to think. I mean, you thought the way you thought, and that's cool. But I think with movies like this, one of the reasons I'm covering this is because I think the presentation of the movie, the intention of the movie, and the final outcome in terms of the artistic presentation are all pointed towards something else. They're pointed towards, when we look at two levels, there's a literal and a figurative. And I think literally when you look at the movie, a movie like this should have all the hallmarks of tragedy, except it's not tragic because all of the characters are on the same level and there's no one falling from a high point to a low point. So it's not a tragedy. In fact, it's almost pure horizontal nothingness. And the humor in the movie is supposed to be laughed at. It's supposed to make you laugh at it and at life. It's not a joke for you to walk away and think that you've been duped or that life is purposeless. Sometimes when we watch works of art that seem to be purposeless, I think we should feel, well, at least I do. I feel a sense of sorrow for the people in the work of the life in the world of the artwork. I feel bad for those people that they didn't come to meaning and that they led their lives in such a fashion. But after all, it's a movie, and I think that it's pretty relevant to say that this is the way that life is presented in this way, because intelligence sort of has this veneer. People that are, in bureaucracy have this sort of mentality, and it's a shame, but one can't help but ironically laugh at the situation, because life is better than this, and at least we're presented with a sort of a glowing vision of nothingness, which I don't think is subtly negative in the movie. I think it is what it is on the surface, and not in terms of, okay, the symbol. There is symbolism in the movie. I don't think that a movie is a movie is a movie. A rose is a rose is a rose. I think that we're watching something where the symbolism actually, in a meta sense, folds back on itself into exactly what they intended it to be, which is this kind of Nietzschean absurdity. And that is funny because life is not that, or doesn't have to be. So it's a kind of gallows humor in a way, I think. The last movie that I'm going to cover is In Bruges. And In Bruges is by far the best of these movies. It is so well written. It's incredibly well written. So before I begin with this, let me say that, again, that our boy Presley out there, our boy PS, sponsored a stream on Martin McDonough, so he's responsible for this one, so thank you so much. And I think that the thing with In Bruges, which is 2008, Martin McDonough, it's got Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Ray Fiennes. It's a fantastic movie. Being There, Jethro, I haven't discussed Being There, and I'm gonna cover it probably in another one. But okay, let me talk about Being There. I'll get to Being There in this one, but let me get to it with this. So with this film, it has all the makings of something that could have gone wrong and could have gone bad. It could have had too much dialogue. The dialogue could have been superfluous. It could have not worked with the chemistry of the actors. The The scene could have been ridiculous. It could have been too much emphasis on the city of Bruges. A million things could have gone wrong in this. And actually, I think my criticism of Martin McDonagh is that is exactly what's happened with some of his later works. I don't know if you guys like the movie Seven Psychopaths or any of his other works, but I'm not a fan. I don't like them. I think that it's especially that movie to me, and it's fine if you like that. That's cool. Tell me what's good. Tell me what's good about it. Tell me where I'm wrong. I'm honestly, genuinely interested if you are a fan of that movie, because what I think is that it's kind of analogous to the way that Quentin Tarantino changed the way that film works and the way that dialogue was written and the way we're presented with characters in the 90s, and that television took this way, way far away from what it was with his films and ends up being something kitschy. And the way that we think about 90s television shows, I mean, whether it's like My So-Called Life or Party of Five or Melrose Place and kind of soap operatic shows like that, or even just dramatic shows, and think of all the countless movies, like that movie Go. Think of all the countless movies that did this. The movies started to focus too much on characterization and dialogue with no point. It wasn't tight. The writing wasn't tight. And it ends up being something emblematic of the 90s, where characters say cool and kitschy and quirky things, and oh, that's a quirky character, but it's not the way that real people are. And I'm not talking about in terms of realism in cinema or in art. I'm talking about an honest depiction or an honest or truthful interpretation of the way that people work. PC Baz said Seven Psychos bored me. Banshees was look, that Banshees movie, I don't like those movies. I think that they are, first of all, there are crude elements in them that I don't appreciate, and also that it's almost crude just in the sense that the dialogue is taking me for a ride where I'm supposed to care for characters that I don't care about. And Seven Psychopaths is the same way. What's the movie with Jeremy Piven where they're like, there's a bunch of gangsters and it's like in Vegas? What was that movie? That's a good example of a bad movie version of this, where the dialogue runs away from the characters. Sometimes it's actually better to say less. And that's why this movie in Bruges is really great, because we have a dichotomy between an old and a young character, and between somebody who doesn't say a lot and somebody who says too much. So yeah, it's the kind of Laurel and Hardy. We've got big Brendan Gleeson and we've got smaller Colin Farrell, and we've got they're kind of the same height, but it's like the fat guy and the skinny guy, the old guy and the young guy. We get the old traditions, the new traditions, just like the way. That's the reason that Bruges is used in this, because we have characters who are coming from modern London and modern England in Europe. They're coming from modern London and modern criminality to medieval Europe, and we're supposed to sense that the outer city, the outer representation is something that contrasts with their inner state. So the movie is about Smoking Aces. Thank you so much. So the movie, thanks Airsats, Aaron. So the movie Ersats. I said Airsats. That's weird. Why did I say that? So Fugazi, it's a Fugazi, it's a Fugazi, it's a Whoozy, it's a Whatsy. Yes, great list, Cyberpunk. 2 Days in the Valley, another great example. Hard 8, another great example. Love It at 45, another great example. Yep, perfect. High IQ audience. Thank you for being here with me. So we have two characters, and the movie starts off with a prologue from Colin Farrell talking about Bruges. And right away, this plays into what the audience, an in-tune audience, will come to love about the movie. It's sort of breaking the fourth wall. We have a meta aspect to this, where obviously the strangeness of the title going. I mean, I remember I saw this in the cinema, and I thought, what the fuck? What is this? Why is this movie about Bruges? Of all places, why are they making the movie about Bruges? What is this going to be about Bruges? Right? And that's addressed right away in the movie. the characters say of all places that they end up in Bruges. And now we learn that we've got these two gangsters who've been sent there by their boss. And later on, as you know, in a kind of non-linear fashion, we learn later on, and this really works well. With all of the humor in the movie is based on these two characters and their dialogue and their culture shock with this place that they're in. So Brendan Gleeson is here and he wants to see the sights. He wants to take the tourists, he wants to go to the tourist places. He's kind of frustrated at some points. Colin Farrell wants to, go to the pub, and he's horrified he has to spend 2 weeks in Bruges in this hotel room with Brendan Gleeson. And we don't know why yet. But what we learn is that all of the humor is to stave off their pain. And the reason for this is because we learned that Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson are both hitmen. They're working for some sort of gangster back in England who's played by Ray Fiennes. And that Colin Farrell they've been sent there because he was ordered to assassinate a priest who's played by Kieran Hines. He goes in again. There's another confession scene, just like in The Counselor, and he's talking to the priest, and then he shoots him. So he violates the sanctity of the church, and he kills this priest. We don't know what the priest has done, but we figure it's he's tied in with organized crimes in some way. Something happened, but when he shoots him, he shoots through him, and he actually ends up killing an innocent bystander who is a CHILD at prayer in the church with a list of prayers that he's written. And Colin Farrell, for all of his nihilistic humor in the movie, is actually torn up with the guilt of what he did, and not because he thinks he's going to be forgiven, but because he's horrified at what he's done and he can never take it back. And the one of the things about the movie that's deceptive in all the right ways for cinema is that when we watch the movie, we grow to like these characters and to care about their lives and to care about their redemption. But when we learn their deeds, we detest the characters and we hate the characters for who they are, but we also want to see the end of their story and where they go. So Brendan Gleeson is a kind of mentor assassin for Colin Farrell, and it ends up that they're in Bruges, not for hiding away from the deed they've just done, and they have to get out of town after the killing, but because they've been sent to this place because it's a place for him to be unalived by his partner, Brendan Gleeson. And then we learn that the bad gangster, Ray Fiennes, who is he's unlikable, but also really likable. And it's amazing how the movie does that, because when we hear him on the phone talking to Brendan Gleeson, he's like, he's asking him about, is he in the room? Is he in the room? Has he left? Go and check that he's left. Are you sure? Are you sure? What the fuck? What's that supposed to mean? What's that mean? He doesn't like it. He doesn't like all the steeples and the swans. And did you see the canals? I went there once when I was a kid. What's there not to like? What you mean he doesn't like it? It's a fucking fairy tale world. What's there not to like about a fairy tale world? And we learned that he sent him there because his own fairy tale world was a place that he went when he was a kid, and he wants to give him one last place before he unalives him, because he says you can't do the thing that he did and get away with it. So even the boss lives with a code. He has a code, and Brendan Gleeson points that out at the end of the movie. He says, this is a code. You've lived by, I respect your honor and your code, and you've always been fair with us, and I thought you were a cunt. I thought so. You say, no, that's not Brendan Gleeson. Brendan Gleeson's Irish in the movie, but he's like, you call me a cunt one more time. Ray finds this character. He's like, look, for all that stuff, you've been fair. So he ends up taking him to the top of the bell tower, and the movie then becomes, actually becomes a gothic western. The music, even, we're supposed to infer from the music, even though the music is not western, it's not Wild West music. It is a European, almost medieval. It gives us the swelling sense of we're coming to a reckoning. It's very complex and difficult how they came to that. And when they come to the bell tower at the top of the steeple, they're not. They're well, it's not. Are they in the church at that point? They go into the church. I guess they're in the. Yeah, they're in the. There are church scenes where there's a memento mori. And this is a clearly foreshadowing for Colin Farrell. But when they go up there, it's supposed to be you're looking at Brendan Gleeson. You see the bell behind him, and he's looking out like he's looking over the town, like he's ascended. And you're thinking, don't let the bell ring. Don't let the bell ring because it's going to shock him, and it'll be so loud. But also because don't ask for whom the bell tolls for thee. It's going to be your own death. And the bell never tolls. But it's because they're up there next to it and they have their Wild West shootout at dawn in the streets of the town, but actually enclosed in a bell tower. And one of the great things about this movie, and it's not Peter Dinklage, by the way. You think that it is, and before I rewatched the movie, I thought it was Peter Dinklage, but it's not. And let me make sure, because it's not Peter Dinklage. It's another guy, and actually, he's probably the best character in the movie. The guy who plays the little person. Let me see here. He is an actor in the movie within the movie. Yeah, it's a guy, Jordan Prentice. It's Jordan Prentice is the actor. So he's a movie within the movie. There's a movie within the movie, and you think that this little person is a kind of a comic foil for Colin Farrell. But what you learn in the movie is that when Colin Farrell is obsessed with the little person in the movie, it's because the movie represents the movie of his own life that he wishes it could be, and that the little person, especially when he appears in a schoolboy outfit towards the end of the movie for his scene in the movie, he's supposed to be a stand-in for Colin Farrell and what he hates about his past and about what he wants to save for his future, which is the little boy. So it ends up being, and that's one of the weird things about the movie, that the guy, he gets unalived in an ironic scene where Ralph Fiennes has clearly stated when he goes to Bruges to eliminate Colin Farrell because Brendan Gleeson sets him free as part of his redemptive act. Yeah, Dinkler Peterlage. He had said, and this was really cool. Again, this was playing on audience expectations. He said if he had been in the situation Colin Farrell was and he had done that, then he would have unalived himself right away, no questions. And that you can't go on with this. So it's cool to see a character, even a bad guy in the movie, who is a good guy in the sense that he has a code with this, a code of honor. And so when he thinks at the end of the movie that he's done it, he says, you got to have your principles. And he does it. He follows through on his word and he unalives himself. And Colin Farrell gets a chance to redeem himself by telling the pregnant woman who owns the inn to leave. She ends up staying put, but he tried to save her, and he ends up taking the fight outside of the hotel to save her and her child, and then he tries to save the little person. And then Brendan Gleeson also plunges to his death from the top of the bell tower just to save Colin Farrell. So it's interesting how all the main characters in the movie end up trying to redeem themselves by saving each other. Probably the best scene in the movie is where Brendan Gleeson goes to buy a weapon from a Belgian arms dealer that's in contact with Ralph Fiennes, and the guy says, he's like, this word, the alcove, what's this word? Yeah, nooks and crannies, yeah. And then Brendan Gleeson goes to the park because he's supposed to unalive Colin Farrell, his partner, because he's been ordered to. And when he gets there, their park is full of children, and then they leave. So Colin Farrell is there trying to, I suppose, in the movie, he's trying to make up for the deed that he did, and this is his final reckoning with himself. But when he does this, Brendan Gleeson appears with a gun, with a silencer, and says, "What are you doing?" and he actually saves him. So instead of taking advantage of that, he's not going to let him do it to himself. He's going to do it. But then he ends up setting him free and putting him on a train to leave. And also, notice that in the movie, this is one of the really cool things about the movie. When they go into the art museum and they look at the triptychs of Hieronymus Bosch, and Brendan Gleeson explains to him about the purgatory scenes, the hell scenes, the final judgment, and the purgatory, they're clearly facing their own guilt and their own grief. And it's gonna be interesting when you watch the movie to see how that is gonna come out in the film. And the way it ends up coming out in the film is that when Ralph Fiennes is chasing Brendan Gleeson through the cobblestone streets, he goes into the movie scene, and the scene they're filming in the movie within the movie is essentially it's essentially a Hieronymus Bosch painting, so that Colin Farrell, who's been shot at this point, thinks that he's in purgatory and that he gets one last act to try and redeem himself, and he ends up being taken away. And the epilogue to the film is him looking up at the ceiling and wishing that he would not be in Bruges again, because Bruges would be hell, to be in a place like Bruges for the rest of his life. But he is clearly looking up at the sky. He's looking up at the light on the ceiling, but it's partly a redemptive scene in the film. And I think that's where the absurdity of the movie really takes a sideline and transcends itself into something with meaning. And it's really clever how they would do that. How are they going to do that with these characters? How are we going to like the characters? How are we going to care for them? How are we going to root for them to succeed when we don't want them to succeed? What can we pull out of this? And we end up, the movie ends up being tight in terms of its dramatic writing and in terms of its characterization, in terms of its place. The place is chosen specifically for those reasons. This isn't a movie that was filmed in some random city because they're European assassins. It could have been that. Instead, it was chosen because all of the exterior scenes are supposed to mimic the interior scenes that they're having, the dialogue that they have with each other, and their dialogue with themselves, and their hopes for redemption and meaning. And the movie, the form of the movie shows us an order out of chaos. And I don't mean ordo ab chaos. I mean that they're living in the chaos they've created as human beings, and they are constantly going into churches. They're constantly, it's surrounded by the battlements and the bulwarks of the medieval city, and the stones and the cobblestones and the canals, and all of this is supposed to be showing us that the things these characters are struggling with are age old. They're not just new things. They're put here for more. So who does PLA hate more, McDonough or Yorgos? Yorgos, for sure. I don't like his movies. I don't like him at all, and I'm not watching the whatever the one that just came out this year is. I'm not watching them. I watched the Lobster. These types of movies, the types of absurdist, nihilistic movies like that involve cruelty to humans and animals that don't seem to have any sort of backing within the content of the film. I just can't stand. I can't stand that. I don't think they're funny, and I just can't stand it. So yeah, Yorgos, definitely. I need to watch Three Billboards because Sam Rockwell, and I haven't seen it. I put it off purposefully, but I really need to watch that one. So if you got a super chat, if you want to donate, should I talk about being there real quick? Hey, CJ right there. CJ, I'm going to say CJ so I don't dox you. CJ sent $20 in there via PayPal. Thank you so much. That is so awesome. That really means a lot to me. If you guys want to super chat using PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, that really helps me. And one thing I need to get, I'm going to do an analysis of Celine's Journey to the End of the Night. This today made me think of it, so I need to get that on my list. And I really want to do Prince Harry's autobiography. I think it would be fun. No one else is reading it. So cheers, I got my GMO drink right here. Cheers, y'all. Help me get another GMO drink. Yeah, and help me get that new Donegal tweed. Yeah, it will definitely spare you the read. You won't have to read it. I'll read it for you. Um, Also, that GoFundMe that makes me think of the Goldfinch. I should probably cover Donna Tartt's Goldfinch. I love that book, and I discovered today. I've never seen the film. I've purposely stayed away from watching the Goldfinch film because I love the book so much. I don't want to be ruined by the film, just in case it's bad. But I just discovered that my friend Harry Smith is in the film with not a big, but he's got a speaking part, sort of a central role in there, a scene with Jeffrey Wright, where he's in the antique shop. So my friend Harry Smith, shouts out to Harry out there wherever you are. Harry also played Harry. He played Prince Harry in the Almeida Theater version of King Charles III, the blank verse play that came out with Tim Pigott Smith as King Charles III. And Tim Pigott Smith also went to my drama school. So I need to watch. I probably need to watch The Goldfinch after all. But I'm thinking about rereading the book. The book was such a heavy read for me. It took so much out of me when I read it. The content is so heavy. It's heavy and it's spiritually and psychically heavy. So I may redo The Goldfinch. If you want to see me do that, put that in the comments afterwards. Let me talk about Being There real quick. Being There was, let me check. Was it 1980? Let's see. I just rewatched it last week. The first time I saw Being There, it's 1979. Yeah, it's got Shirley MacLaine. Being There, the first time I saw this was when I was in grad school in Belfast, and on Channel 4 on a Saturday night at midnight, this film came on, and I always loved it when that happened because at the time, this was before there was Wi-Fi. This was 2005, 2006 when I moved back to Belfast, and I was living in Mount Charles. I was living on Mount Charles, and in a ground floor flat for grad school students, and I had a solo room. It was pretty cool, but the thing is that this is before Wi-Fi. I had a gigantic Dell laptop with a Wi-Fi connection, but there was no Wi-Fi setup. You had to go to the library still to use the Queen's internet. And I had a television. I had a VCR still. And I brought like 3 DVDs with me, one of which was Anchorman. I brought Anchorman, Donnie Darko, and like Seinfeld season 2. Is all I could bring with me, and so I would watch them on my laptop. But movies would come on Saturday nights. If you're from there, if you're from the UK, then let me know if that's still a thing. I'm sure everybody has internet and cable now, so it would be a lot different. But these are the things. This was like reminded me of home when movies came on. So I remember watching Being There and going, "What the fuck is this?" And dude, I laughed and laughed at this movie. I thought it was so funny. And I think that people, if you've seen Being There, I think there's probably maybe 2 types of people that would watch this. They would go, I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense and it's boring. Or there's the type who would watch it because it's midnight on a Saturday night in like November in Belfast, and you've got nothing else to do that night, and it's just hilarious. So what happens is that basically there's a guy named Chancey. He's Chance the Gardener. He's Chauncey Gardner later. But Chauncey Gardner is watching television, and there are long sequences of him he wakes up in his bed, he turns on the television, and he's watching television. And so we learned that Chauncey Gardner is this truly absurdist character who is either a beautiful slow boy, or he is just there by chance. Everything happens to him by happenstance, but he's living in this mansion. He's a gardener. He's been living there for years, and the housekeeper comes in and tells him that the guy who owns the house has died. He has no reaction. He just has nothing, and everything is from the television. It's just ads. And this is pretty relevant for now because even though most people, especially young people, don't watch TV, they watch their phones. and we, pay now to not have to look at ads. It's still, we still live in a world where, you imagine the Neuralink and people are walking around having to swipe ads out of the way in real life, like as if it's Minority Report. That ads set the theme and the tempo for the film, where everything is somewhere else dislocated from the main character. So he's put out on the street and he's walking around in his bowler cap and his umbrella, and he comes across a group of youths on the street, and they tell him, if you see such and such, tell him he owe me $5, right? And he just absorbs, and then finally he ends up being in this accident where Shirley MacLaine takes him to her own personal doctor at home, because Shirley MacLaine is the wife of essentially an R-child type of industrialist living at the Biltmore Mansion, which is actually, they place it in New York. And it's in D.C. The whole thing's in D.C. I'm sorry, not New York. The whole thing's in D.C. And who's the main guy? Who's the old man in it? Benjamin Rand. Yeah, the character Benjamin Rand. So it's, Rand is the main guy, Rand Corporation, Rand child, R-child. And he is a guy who is an industrialist who is dying of old age in the film. But he's got some sort of, cancer or something. And I forget what he says. There's a specific scene where he says what he has. But he takes in Chauncey Gardner because Chauncey Gardner is there to get a medical procedure to make sure he's okay, so they're not sued because she hit him, right? And she wants to make sure that he gives cryptic answers unintentionally. So everything that anybody says to him in the movie seems like the perfect answer, and it ends up with him basically living in this house, and then he starts going to ambassador parties, and he starts mixing in with the hoi polloi, and he even gets seduced by Shirley MacLaine and gets permission to do so by her husband who's dying, saying basically, Chauncey, take care of my wife when I'm gone. And the end of the movie is a funeral scene where Rand has passed away, and the president has come to talk to him, and he learns that Chauncey Gardner is this for this Rand guy, and the president has to listen to him. And the things Chauncey ends up saying, his little stories about gardening, become Pentagon talking points. And then at the end of the movie, there's basically the Council of Seven, is they're the pallbearers, and they're taking the casket of Rand up the steps between Yakin and Boaz up to the crypt, and there's a giant all-seeing eye, and they're talking about who are we going to get for our next man. Our next man has got to be Chauncey Gardner, and this is weird because this is weirdly predictive of both Reagan in the 80s and now. This is what we have now and what we had in the 80s, in a sense, are pure Chauncey Gardner characters. They are either not there, or beautiful slow boys, or deteriorated, or they are actors playing a role, or whatever you have, but they are the pure vessel for the CFR Trilateral Commish Council of 33. What is it? What's it called? The P2 Lodge dudes who are going to pick the next guy. So Chauncey Gardner ends up being this, and at the end of the film, the last scene of the film is him basically walking on water. So he becomes but it's an absurdist version of this. It's not that he is. This isn't an irreligious take. The movie is not supposed to be it's not supposed to be an anti-allegory, and it's essentially all secular. It's all power politics and the absurdism of politics in the DC Beltway. But the end of the movie is him essentially walking mirror style on the water walking out into the water as if they are placing this role on him like he's the new chosen one, and he is not there to save them. He's just an empty vessel. He is not. It's not supposed to be a take on Christ walking on water, but the implication is that they are seeing him as their version of this in their sort of secular beltway, power politics, all-seeing eye, occultic version of it, if that makes sense. So tell me what your thoughts are on being there and on absurdist films. If you would, afterwards, put a list in there. Give me some films that you think qualify for this. And qualify for the sort of offshoots of Tarantino, offshoots of the various things of this. Tell me what you think about Martin McDonagh. Tell me what you think about, there's another Brad Pitt film coming out with George Clooney. That it is what it is. What I'm really interested to see, I did a Furiosa analysis last night, so if you want to get a membership, you can see that. What I really want to see that's totally different from this is, look, yeah, Under the Silver Lake. Yeah, look, okay, hey, Toledo, how's it going? So, look, I've got my own thoughts on A24 and all of the things they're pushing. I've talked about A24 a lot, especially on ACR, Boiler Room, and TNT. But I will say this. I saw a trailer for a new A24 movie, and I actually really liked it. I thought this is really, really right up my alley. And it is remember I did the stream on The Final Girl, and I talked about American Horror Story 84 Camp Redwood, which is the only one that I've seen, and I actually really liked it because it has that scene with the guy playing Richard Ramirez, and he says, "Idol only plays one way, full throttle. Flash for fantasy. Yeah. Flash for fantasy." Right, and it's got Mr. Jingles, and it's a parody of 80s slasher films. And that's the movie Maxine that's coming out, and it's got Mia Goth that I covered in my analysis of Infinity Pool. So it's got Mia Goth, and it's supposed to be movie within a movie, a slasher movie, and it's supposed to be very 80s, and it looks very. When I watched it, it's like, okay, this is new retro wave, synth wave, 80s slasher film. Kind of all of the fun things that I like in watching a movie that you don't have to take seriously. I'm sure there'll be serious elements in it and symbolic elements of it. But I really do want to see Maxine. I think it looks really good. There's another one that is out now that's another A24 movie. That's two A24 movies I'm actually talking about. And I've talked about The Witch, but, Midsommar. Just the way that A24 movies are and what they push, and the subtle denigration of a certain type of person, is always the bad guy, right? Okay, I've had enough. But Barbarian, I've covered Barbarian, and I do appreciate cinema for cinema, regardless of the like as Jerry Bruckheimer said in that interview I was talking about yesterday on Hesher. Listen, cinema is cinema. Okay, and what I really like to do is, I got to tell you. So, Charlie Rose says, "Who do you think are the biggest stars in the world?" Well, I have to say Tom Cruise. Certainly Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks. Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks, the two Toms. The thing that separates Tom Cruise is that he wants to win. He's very competitive. And on the set of Days of Thunder, of course, he could have been a Formula One race car driver. He could have been a stock car driver. He's going to win at anything he does. And Tom is the type of guy who will spend 12 hours on a set and then will call me at 3 in the morning and 3 a.m. and he'll say, "Listen, I've got some good ideas about the script. I've got some good ideas about location. What do you have to say about this? Let's work it in the morning." So at 6 a.m. the next morning, it's a curtain call. Everybody's there. We got our call. And Tom Cruise is the first one on the set. He's the last one to leave the set. He wants to win. And I appreciate that about him. Actors are they're a variety. It's a various bunch of people. They're very sensitive. They're on the set for 8 hours a day, sometimes for 3 months. And Tom Cruise never we never get complaints from Tom Cruise. We never have to placate him. He's always there. He's a true professional. This is what I like about the movies. I think it's important to go to the movies. I was just there on 53rd and 3rd. I was watching Terminator. I was there with my hand in the popcorn. I was there laughing and crying. And I think that this is what's really important for movies, because movies, he never messes up his words. He never hesitates. He never uses ums and ahs. He just goes straight through. Bruckheimer, oh yeah, there's the part where he goes, He goes, you know what I really liked about Pirates of the Caribbean. The reason that I did it was because they asked me to. They asked me to do it. They asked me to take a look at it. So the way I had it written was I had two screenwriters look at it, and the two screenwriters, they looked at Pirates of the Caribbean and they said, here's what we can do to this. And this was an interesting idea because what we have here is we have ghosts. We have ghosts of pirates. That goes against the grain of the usual pirate story because instead of looking for buried treasure, they're looking to return the buried treasure. So of course I hired the wonderful Jonathan Depp. Now Johnny Depp is great because he didn't fit into the type for a usual Disney movie. And, some movies like we did, Babe that's a PG-10 movie. That's a PG-10 movie. Then we did Pirates of the Caribbean. That's a PG-13 movie. We can have teenagers there. We can have their parents there. We can have adults there. But Days of Thunder, that's a hard R. I just love listening to these people who this guy is true. I did please go back and watch my stream on High Concept and the Hollywood culture of excess about Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. I mean, he is just, there's no stilted conversation. Everything just flows, not even mellifluously. He just talks Hollywood, and it's all about getting people in the seats. Charlie Rose goes, now listen, you earned $56 billion last year, just in terms of your box office. What does that mean to you? And Jerry Bruckheimer says, well, I'll tell you, Charlie, not everything's about the money. The money's great, and that allows us to facilitate the making of more movies. But what it really means is, he just goes. This guy just goes. His goal is to get people in the seats watching movies. Okay, and now that's not his only goal. He's tied in with military-industrial complex and cooperation for the films and culture creation. He said that specifically in the book and talking about Top Gun, and he's got all that. There's a lot more to it, but I'm just saying on that one level, it's just interesting to listen to him. So I think shouts out to Rachel right there. So I think it's really interesting that go to Manufacturing Intellect and watch those interviews between Charlie Rose and Jerry Bruckheimer. It's pretty hilarious. So I think that's about it, you guys. I think that's going to do it. What do I have coming up? I think Boiler Room's tonight. If you guys want to go over to ACR and you can check out Boiler Room late night if they're on tonight. Maybe I'll drop in. I'm not sure, but I got a lot to do and a lot going on. And I'll be doing pure literary streams again with Timon of Athens, William Shakespeare. I'll be doing Celine's Journey to the End of the Night. That takes care of another Coen Brothers that I did. Shouts out to our friend Jethro for sponsoring that No Country for All Men stream and for getting me to do this one. Shouts out to Presley, P.S. Presley, who was the inspiration and who sponsored the stream on Martin McDonagh. And in Bruges, we got a bunch more coming up. I got to do World on a Wire and a bunch of other stuff. And give me ideas, things that you want me to cover in the future. If you want to support me, you can do that at any time through Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, and Super Chats, of course. You can ask me a question at any time. I think there's another one that there was another one in here that I need to drop another shout out that I got on Venmo the other day. And let's see. We got Rob, we got Kira. We got Kira last night, a couple nights ago for Screw Tape. Go back and watch my Screw Tape letters. Go back and watch the stream that I did on Heavy Things Lightly with John Heers. That was a great interview. If you guys want to see me on there again, let him know. I had a lot of fun. He was great person to talk to. Great conversation. So shouts out to CJ for that $20. Shouts out to JG. Hey, shouts out to Circle G right there who drops $5 on PayPal. He said, can you tell us a movie that you think was just up its own butt? Mine is Three Burials of Melquiades Estrada. Yes, that's a good question. I would call that a movie that is insistent, a movie that insists upon itself. And, dude, I don't know. You know what? Probably Shawshank Redemption. That's going to be a hot take. But I think Shawshank Redemption is people are going to be mad about that one. I can see why people like Shawshank Redemption. Pretty much everybody loves it. I'm not a fan of Shawshank Redemption. I rewatched it again the other night. I've seen it a bunch of times, but I think it is insistent. As Peter Griffin says, it insists upon itself. It is too insistent. Another easier example of that would be probably Saving Private Ryan. I mean, that movie is insistent. It's totally up itself. The Irishman does that in a way. But there's a bunch of them. I mean, pretty much, if you take the Oscars and you look at some of the main examples of, you look at the best category to judge this by is look at the category for Best Supporting Actress. And usually you'll see a bunch of films that are overrated or that are insistent or that are pushing something that is not earned within the artwork itself. So that's what I would say about that. Hey, speaking of Stephen King, check out the Misery stream that I did. That's like the third biggest stream that I did now. It keeps growing. That one on my Misery analysis, I didn't expect that. So I'm glad people like that. It was one of my favorite ones that I've done recently for sure. I had fun with that one. Let's see. Oh, yeah, shouts out to NP out there in Purcell. He dropped $10, so I think I gave you a shout out, but I'm just making sure. Thanks for the HHHH stream that I did and the John Here's discussion. I learned a great deal and enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. If I didn't get to you for one of your shouts out, then I will get to you, I promise. And also, shouts out to, let's see. Shouts out to, let me see. Somebody just dropped this. Shouts out to Will for that $5. Appreciate you, Will. Thank you so much for that $5 on Cash App. No comment. So thank you, Will. Really appreciate that. It really means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Abel Ferrara. Oh, Cyberpunk says, can we get an Abel Ferrara? Yeah, I mean, if you want to sponsor a stream, then you can do that on PayPal or any of the big ones, and I will certainly get to that. If you want to sponsor a stream on like Bad Lieutenant or Bad Lieutenant Port of Call or anything Abel Ferrara, give me some choices, and I'll cover that for sponsored streams. I ask for $100 for sponsored streams for film and for a film television series. I need to do Raised by Wolves. I'm going to get to that, and for book analyses. So if you want me to do it, I really appreciate that. And thank you for dropping that $5. That's a great idea. So thank you so much. Hey, check out Rachel Wilson at Based Homeschool Mom. Check out The Crucible. Check out Jamie's stream that she just did with Isaac Weishaupt. If you want to see me, I would love to meet Isaac. I would love to be able to do a stream with him. If you want me to do that, then drop him something on Twitter or wherever. And also, I wish I could get to the event on June, June 22nd in Vegas. Is anybody going to that? I wish I could get to it. I got to teach a class on cinema and film, so I won't be there. But I hope that there will be something, especially in the future, here on the East Coast or in the South. That would be awesome. And, I really want to get to one of those. So that'll be about it, you guys. I'm going to go and watch another movie, I guess. I'm going to chill out. I'm on vacay now. I'll be doing a lot more streams now that I have some more time. And I might be on Johnny Venmore on TNT. And also, I'd love to get back on Burmis. You guys, if you want to see me anywhere, I'll let people know. But otherwise, please just thank you. Please hit that like bell and the share. I love y'all so much. Thank you for being here with me. It really means a lot. And especially for supporting me, getting those memberships, hitting that like. Go to Rooks G. Support him. Rachel says I'm doing Johnny Venmore too. Sweet. Shouts out to Rachel, who is just absolutely killing it. I mean, it's like, I don't want to say it's unbelievable. I would say that's not the right word. It is exhilarating. It's exhilarating to see our friends really, really just rising and doing well and getting a larger audience and getting more people out there to see our friends who are so generous, kind, and genuine and brilliant. So good to see everybody. Thank you so much. And I'm going to play us out. Hey, to play us out. What does that mean, to play us out? To end the show? All right. Go. And that'll do it here. And here's Sting. Can't do it. We do it live. Fuck it. We do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. fucking thing sucks. And that'll do us here. So here's Sting and cut off his new album. I'm going to keep doing that. It's still funny to me. One more thing I'll say is that there was a scene. I hope my audio wasn't too hot all this time. Shouts out to everybody out there for putting up with it. I'm doing the best I can with audio. But there was a scene. I couldn't believe this occurred. This was like so synchro. This is the last thing I'll say. Where in the movie, in Bruges, there's a scene where Brendan Gleeson says to Colin Farrell, do I have to remind you that you remember? And he says, oh, why'd you have to bring that up? Why'd you have to bring that up? Why? And this is the thing that I developed like a couple weeks ago where, follow me on this. The worst thing that you can say to somebody, especially like a friend or somebody, is to leave a space and to not say anything. So for instance, a person like, let's say you're with a friend and they get their debit card declined or something. And they say, I can't believe I got my debit card declined. And you go, that's because and you don't say anything. And the person, try this. The person will automatically fill it in with the worst possible thing. I'm 100 for 100 on this. This has not failed with me. Every time I've done this to somebody, they've done exactly what I thought they were going to do. Like the person will go, what? What? Because you're saying because I'm a broke ass? You're saying because I'm a piece of shit? What do you mean by that? And you go, I was going to say because the company machine wasn't working, but you're a great guy. But just do that. They will fill it in with the worst possible thing. Next time something goes wrong or somebody says something like they'll be like, why is my dinner cold? And you'll be like, well, it was warm, but it's because you're, and they'll go, what? You're saying because I was late, because I'm never here? That's what you're saying to me? And you'll go, I was going to say because I made it too soon. Like, it doesn't matter what the situation is. They will fill it in with the worst possible thing. And they'll say it out loud. And they'll act like they'll act like you like you called them out on the worst aspect of themselves. and you have to counter it with the good thing, but you have to do it with timing. But this has worked for me. I've done this 100 times in real life with people. Like my friend called me and he was like, dude, why is everything so fucking shitty, man? Why did she do this to me? And I was like, well, she did it to you because and he'll be like, dude, that's low, man. I can't believe you said that. And I'll be like, no, I was going to say because, she doesn't appreciate you and you're obviously a great guy. It's very funny to me. Okay. All right. I'm going to leave it at that. So try that out, everybody. Okay. That's it. Here's Sting and to cut off his new album. Here's Rooks G, ROOXG. Please go to Rooks G. Check him out on all the things. Here's a Rescue Mission. Peace, y'all. Love you. Buddy gave me a lucky strike, so I'm trying it. Ordinarily, I would never smoke anything off-brand, but he gave me one of these, so I'm trying it. That's the Brad Pitt dance. Good night, all you special beings. That's absolutely right. Love y'all. Good night, all you special beings out there. Peace. Peace.